right, let's give this a try. Let me know if you can hear what's going on, if you can see what's going on. See how this works. Jump into the chat. Let me know if you can see and hear what's going on. We're gonna go back to the old way of doing stuff. So we tried something new. Let me know if you can hear the music and if you can hear the voice. And then I'll pull the music out so we can chat a little bit. Let me know what you're seeing, what you're hearing, all of that stuff. This should be okay. I'm assuming. It seems like it's right. It seems like it's the normal way we do things. Awesome, all good, sweet. So I was trying something new. I was trying to use OBS to stream. That was what that little glitch was a few minutes ago, trying to get a stream up and running, and it was just not working the way I wanted it to. So I think my computer didn't like having OBS, YouTube streaming, and Ableton all going at the same time, plus the software for the webcam. Yeah, I need a new computer. Anyway, help me out, need a new computer. So yeah, we're gonna go back to the old way. I'm gonna chat a little bit today about the hybrid live setup, or sorry, the hybrid production setup that I've been working on. I was hoping with OBS to be able to do a bunch of screen capture and screen streaming so that you can see what I'm doing in Ableton, but I'm gonna leave that for another day. It's gonna take me some time to get that up and running and set up exactly the way that I want it to be. So yeah, so I'll talk about this side of it first, and then we can talk a bit about the Ableton side afterwards, and exactly what we're doing there. But the idea with all of this is going to be about using a live performance setup in production, and so that you can perform live into your setup, and so that you can use the things that you do naturally when you're performing live as a way to produce unique sounding music and have it sound more spontaneous, more interesting, and less kind of mechanical, repetitive, like it can be when you're in the DAW, when you're kind of copying, pasting things. They tend to sound very similar, and this way it can be a little bit more kind of free flowing with it. We'll talk a little bit about how everything's set up here within my live setup, so that it relates to hardware, or so that it relates to software, and what that looks like, and yeah, kind of the gear that I'm using for that. I've changed things up a bit recently, and this will be a way to yeah, chat a bit about that. So let's try a different view here. We'll go for the broader view. I haven't done this one before, or at least in a while. So what we've got going here is I have an audio interface up on a rack right here, up on a stand. And what this is for is so that I can get multi-track from my modular system out and into the computer. So what I'm doing here is with the BoardBrain Elektron, this has a separate module, which actually I'll switch to the overhead view so you can see a little better. This has a separate module right here, which is called the I/O. That's connected on the back of the panels with ribbon cables. So this has, for the 6 stereo channels that the Elektron has, this has 6 stereo outs pre-fader, meaning you get the sound whether or not the fader is up. It has 6 stereo outs as well that are post-fader, so you get that much more like the performance you've done. So anything that you're fading in, you'll get that fade in going out of that channel, where the other channel will just have the full volume so that you could go in and edit it how you want. Then it also has 2 stereo outs for the 2 effects returns. So whatever you have coming into that, and I'll talk a little bit about how I have that set up in a minute. And then it also has a stereo out that is the main. So it's basically everything that's coming from the mixer is going out via the main. I'm actually not using that one right now because I have I generally go from this setup out to the analog heat, and then I go from that into my mixer. So I use that as my kind of main overall mix, and it gives a little bit of processing on the end, a little bit of saturation and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's how I have the mixer kind of set up here. So no matter what I'm doing with the mixer, I have the choice to use, I have the choice to split out a stereo pre-fader, stereo post-fader, or the returns. And so what I'm doing here is I have these coming out post-fader because I want to be able to get the performance in there, but also still be able to multi-track. So each one of these is coming out from the I/O and going into channels in the audio interface, which is right up here. You can't see it right really in this view, but in this view you can. It's this right over here underneath the computer is the audio interface. So all of these inputs are coming from the I/O and going into that. So what that means is that when I'm in the studio and I want to record, I can just connect those cables to the I/O, and then I can just perform live the same way that I would if I was playing a show, and I can record that multi-track into my DAW. Then when it comes time to leave, if I want to go and play a show somewhere, I just have to disconnect those cables, and then I can take my setup and go perform live somewhere else, come back and reconnect it. What's interesting with this is with a lot of mixers, it's difficult to have the mixer work with your outputs. So generally, what I was doing prior to this, I had an Expert Sleepers ES9, and I was using that via USB to a computer so that I could multi-track from the ES9. The problem is that you have to cable all of your patch into the ES9 to send it out. And then when it comes time to perform, if you're not performing with the computer as well, you have to unpatch that and patch it all back into your mixer to be able to use. And so having a mixer like this, and then there's a few others. The WMD has a DB25 output as well, and some individual outputs as well that can be used pre-fader or post-fader. And so there are more and more mixers that are doing this these days, which is great for those of us who are performing and producing. So having something like this, the Elektron has been really cool because it gives me both pre and post-fader and returns and a master out. So it gives you a lot of flexibility about which signals you want to use. So I could use all of them, I could use none of them, I could use some of them, it doesn't really matter. And you can even use them in performance. So for example, if you wanted to use your kick signal to send to something that has a side chain, for example, like into the Digitac 2, you could send it into one of the inputs. So go from the pre-fader out to the input in the Digitac 2, and then you set it up so that that input is triggering the sidechain in the compressor inside. So you can use that kick signal without having to mess with the kick signal at all, without having to split it and divide it or do anything. And also it doesn't depend on the fader. So this way, when the fader's down, when you don't hear the kick or when it's muted, you're still getting the full signal out if you do the pre-fader one. So you can still get that side chain. So if you're doing it to get like a pumping effect, you can get that without having to worry about whether or not you've got this in. Sometimes if you're using a signal from your mixer to do that, if the signal's down, you don't get the side chaining effect that you want to get. And so it just makes it a little bit, I don't know, less flexible, less usable. And this is really a really flexible way to be able to do this. And you can also use the outputs, either pre-fader or post-fader, to create additional effects chains if you want. So you can send out from one of these signals or one of these outputs into, let's say, a chain of outboard pedal effects. and then you can come back into one of the returns here, or in through a mixer back into your mixer. So then you've got another opportunity, whether it's pre-fader or post-fader. It doesn't have a send that's controllable, but you can use that to send out a signal that's kind of always there, and you can control the return volume if you want, if you're using one of these returns, and you can use it. You can also control what's going on the individual effects. So, and if you don't have it coming in through a return, so I also have right next to this, I have a small stereo mixer, which is how these devices are being connected into the system. If you were to send out through another effect, you could return it back into this, and you could then have volume control over it. So a lot of different ways to do it, and a lot of flexibility. And the thing that I've really been enjoying with it is that you don't have to disconnect and reconnect things. Like, they're just there to use whenever you want to use them, and so you can send those signals out in a way that is that's usable, whether you're performing or producing. So it kind of works for both things. It's cool. It's not too big, so you can just kind of leave it in your case, and that way, when you come to your studio, you set it up. When you leave, you can take it out, and you can use things as part of your signal path as well. So, like, for example, you see that none of the, if I do the overhead here, you can see that none of the outputs that are pre-fader are being used right now. So I have the opportunity to use those for other things. So I could send those, like I said, as a sidechain input into the Digitact if I wanted to, or other things. So again, it's like having multiples in your system, plus having different versions of multiples, because some of them are pre-fader, some are post-fader, and then having full, complete return signals and having a master. So a lot of possibilities for setting up like parallel processing and all kinds of interesting stuff with this. So what I wanted to talk about today is how I'm using this now for a hybrid production setup. So it's not just live, it's it now has the flexibility to be, just because of this module with this mixer, it has the possibility of now being a production tool much more easily and a performance tool. So using those things, using all the same things for both, which is, super handy. Again, as we look back here, this audio interface that's here, that has all of the different channels going into it, this is connected via USB to my computer. So then I can go into the computer, I can go into Ableton, it recognizes this, and I can send each one of these to their own track in Ableton. So that way, every single thing from inside my modular case, including everything that's going through the mixer, effects, returns, even my outboard gear is coming through certain channels, and I have those multi-tracked out. So that's all of that gear is now able to be split out by individual channels. So I can just hit record, perform, play, practice, whatever, and then go back to Ableton and have everything split out. Now I'm also using a couple of Elektron boxes here. Obviously, the Digitact 2 I have connected via USB cable to the computer as well. So all of the 60 tracks of the Digitact 2 are able to be multi-tracked into Ableton using Overbridge. So this doesn't need to be part of this whole interface system. This was already really super easy to do, just to be able to send that out. But the hard part was always the modular, right? Getting it to be able to be multi-tracked out in an easy way without taking up a ton of space in the case and without patching and unpatching things. Now, new unique problem. I just started using the Digitone 2 this last week when I got it. And this does not have Overbridge support yet. So I can't use that same USB out. I will be able to soon as they get the Overbridge finished for it. And so to get those 16 tracks multi-tracked into Ableton, that will be much, much easier with the USB connection and Overbridge once that starts happening. But in the meantime, since it's not, this is going into my modular setup through one of the mixer channels that's here. So when I'm performing to record in, I can turn down the volume on the digitact because that's going out multi-track, and I can leave the volume up for the digatone. So I'm getting basically just a master out from those, so I'm not getting it multi-tracked yet, but I can still pick up those bits as their own individual instrument. So it is possible to get bits of it right now, but not quite everything with Overbridge. But as soon as Overbridge starts, well, then I'll just be able to do single USB connection, 16 tracks in Ableton, and yeah, it'll be able to be much easier. So that's already, if you think about it, there's 8 tracks coming from here, so 6 from the mixer, and then the 2 return tracks. Those are all going out independently into Ableton. Then 16 tracks from the digitact, another 16 as soon as the Digatone 2 has Overbridge support. So that'll be 32 tracks plus 8 here. So that's 40 tracks able to be multi-tracked out of this system. Obviously, you don't want to have 40 tracks going at the same time, but what it does give you the opportunity is you have everything split out. And why that's important for a hybrid live set or hybrid performance setup and a hybrid production setup is because you never know which things you're going to reach for especially if you're doing an improvised style the way that I play. So you never really know kind of which sound, which instrument, whichever you're going to reach for at a moment within the performance. And if you were recording into a DAW in a really traditional way, meaning you would go track by track and okay, now I'm going to do the kick, now I'm going to record the bass, now I'm going to record the whatever, the melody. If you're doing a traditional recording like that, you're not getting the flow of it all together, and you lose a lot of the spontaneity because you may get inspired by something when you're performing live, and you want to be able to capture that. So with being able to multi-track and have 40 tracks multi-tracking into Ableton, what that allows me to do is no matter what I play, some of those tracks may be completely blank at the end of the recording. Some of those tracks may have just a little, 20-second little bit of something that I did with that individual instrument at some point in an hour-long performance or whatever. But it allows you to capture all of those things no matter what channel they're on, rather than having to go in single tracking every single thing as you go along. So with that said, if anybody has any questions about this, please pop them in the chat. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. I know this is a bit of a different subject, but one of the reasons that I wanted to go over this is I'm just launching right now a hybrid production course, and this is a bit of what we're going to go over in the course. So I just wanted to give everybody a little preview. And yeah, so if you're interested in that, there's a link in the description of the video. You can go check that out. And there's a huge sale going on right now for Black Friday. So biggest discount I've ever offered on any of my courses. So if you're interested in doing it now, you can sign up for the December, January, or February course now with the discount. But the discount's going to go away after Black Friday. So you get about a week, and the amount of the discount is going down each day, depending on how many people sign up. So with every 5 people that sign up, it goes down by another 10%. So right now, I think it's at 40%. So you get 40% off any of the courses. So jump in and check those out. Let's see here. Hey, James, what's going on? Unknown artist, what's going on? How are you? I read your mind on the subject. Cool. I love when that happens. I had that happen the other day, which I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. A totally different subject, but important for this video. But I had the same thing happen. I had a YouTube video pop up that totally read my mind of something that I was thinking about doing a video on. Bradley, hey, appreciate your channel. I'm glad you do. Thank you very much. Just got the Syntact, and when I multi-track via Overbridge, I'm noticing the reverb delay track gain level doesn't match the level when listening via the Syntact. So when you use Overbridge to multi-track in, you're going to get your reverb and delays. They're going to have their own track, so you can adjust that volume once you get into Ableton. One of the things that you'll notice when you multi-track with Overbridge, or when you use Overbridge to get anything into your DAW, is that your levels will be much lower than what you're hearing just out of the straight machine. And a lot of that is, they set that up on purpose because they want to make sure that you have plenty of headroom, knowing that you're going into a DAW and you're going to be able to jack that headroom up. So if you have, let's say you built your template out, so you've got your individual tracks. If your delay and reverb tracks, your effects track is not as loud as any of the other ones, just increase the gain on that channel and then save that into your template. So if you're using Ableton, I always use the utility plugin, just because it's great because you can use the utility to add gain, but then you still have volume control. So when you're going through your production process and you want to add automation, if you want any automation on the volume level of the track, you don't ever want to automate the actual volume. You want to automate the utility plugin with the gain, because if you automate the volume, if at any time during mixing you move that volume, you've just disabled that automation and you probably won't even notice. And then all the work that you spent trying to get it to sound the way you want is gone kind of out the window. So if you use the utility plugin, which is by far my favorite plugin in Ableton because it's just so useful. But if you use the utility, then you can adjust those levels. And it's not exactly the same from every Elektron box. So you'll see, I've noticed that the analog rhythm is louder volume than the newer boxes, because I think with the newer boxes, they were saying that they intentionally built in more headroom so that you wouldn't clip going in. If you were to do something like add a whole bunch of resonance to a filter and it would drive up your volume a lot, that could cause it to clip going in, and then you're going to record a distorted signal. And so with this, you don't have to worry about that because they reduce down I can't even remember how many decibels it is, but it's quite a bit that they reduce down going into the computer from the device. So just gain that up by channel on the other side with the utility. Let's see. Do you have a lot of latency with the DUTAC 2 via Overbridge? There's some latency with every piece of gear and it all. I think a lot of it really depends on how you're sending your MIDI signal and then how the audio signal is coming back. So for example, if you're using Overbridge to have the audio signal come back, it will be much quicker than if it's going out from there into an audio interface and then in. One of the beautiful things about Overbridge is that it goes direct, and so that way you can reduce down the amount of latency. But mostly what causes latency is the speed of your computer. So if you can adjust the buffer time in the settings in your software, that will help with latency a lot. And then depending on the software, I'm not sure with Logic. I know Ableton and Bitwig both have some really good devices for editing for latency by channel. So you can nudge things one way or the other by channel. Another thing that really helps if you're using Ableton is to turn the monitoring off when you're recording audio. For some reason, when you have the monitoring on, it really changes the latency like a noticeable amount. So if you have a decent buffer and you've turned the monitoring off, your latency gets down to be very, very, very small. You get some complications. I do all the time, and I'm constantly trying to adjust stuff. You get complications when you mix clock signals and when you mix the type of audio, the way it's going back. So I have some things going in via Overbridge, so it's a quicker input. I have the rest of this going in via the audio interface, which is a different amount of latency. Some is clocked from the Oxy directly. So this is the sequencer sequencing things. Then the clock is being sent out to the devices and then things are happening, sequencing or timing of delays or whatever within that. So that can change up what your latency is. And then if you try to use internal devices within your DAW, whether it's a synth or effects or whatever, that can change the latency. So the latency settings are really unique to every single setup, and it's kind of a never-ending battle to try and get it sorted. One thing that does help is when you get a setup that you like, definitely save that as a template, because generally latency doesn't change very dramatically from day to day. It'll be more from device to device or audio signal to audio signal. So once you get that dialed in, then you can really, save it and leave it like that for every single time you use that device. So that's what I do. I don't know if that'll help you or not, but that's what I do. Let's see here. Just read the Overbridge manual since I was troubleshooting another subject, and they provide a very comprehensive example to install and avoid latency. Yes, it definitely helps, for sure. The Erica bassline doesn't have a fine-tune knob. Do you find that to be an issue? No, not at all. For me, honestly, tuning is something that is always kind of a struggle, but at the same time, it's something that I try not to overthink and overdo. One good thing with the Erica bassline is that you can dial it in and then it's got a lock. There's like a set screw that can lock it in place, which is great. I wish more modules had that. I don't know why they make the tuning knob the biggest one on all these modules when it's like the one you want to bump or touch or nudge the least. But yeah, I don't find it's a huge issue. I don't know, it's one of those things, like I tune things by ear, so I can tune it in pretty easily. And it generally doesn't go that far off. And if it does, it's not a huge deal for me for the type of music that I make, because it tends to be a bit atonal anyway. So if it goes a bit off, that's fine, and I can just dial it back in. But no, I haven't noticed that it's been an issue, because I don't really need the fine tune, and there is a lot of control with the knobs on the bassline. So, and they're really stiff. So once you move it into a position, it doesn't really move out of that position. So, anyway, let's see here. Pick up notes with Ableton compared to Studio One is that when you disable a plugin in Ableton, you still inherit the latency of the plugin. Yeah, I'm not sure. I've used Ableton since like Ableton 4, so I'm kind of used to the way Ableton does stuff. But yeah, and that's kind of the case with anything. The more plugins you stack, you're going to overload the CPU of your computer, and that's going to cause more and more latency. So it's just, like whenever you use, I would say use stock plugins as much as you possibly can, because anytime you add in third-party plugins, you're just going to it's going to cause a lot more strain on the CPU, and you'll just notice it a whole bunch more. So, yeah. So using stock plugins for me has always been the thing. I mean, with any of these DAWs anymore, their stock plugins work really well. So you don't have to worry too much about that, but using stock plugins can be a big help to reduce the amount of latency. Also, I'm not sure with other DAWs that I'm not as familiar with, but with Ableton, you can go into the settings and there's a way to see the amount of latency that's being caused by the output and input from the devices that you have going, and you can adjust it in there as well. So there's a lot of tools to be able to adjust latency, even though it's it's never perfect. I'll just tell you that. The only way to really dial it in is if you're always using the exact same setup and you have a clock system that is really, like an ERM multi-clock, for example, where you can have one clock that's controlling the computer, each individual piece of gear on its own. You don't have to do any kind of relaying of signals. Because like when I'm producing with this setup here, I connect the Oxy to Ableton via USB. And then I put Ableton set to be clocked externally. So it's all being clocked from the Oxy. So that way when I press play here, it presses play on everything and on the DAW at the same time. But again, you're changing MIDI signals from one to the other. I may be changing that up right now. I do have an MRCC MIDI connector splitter in the studio. And so being able to use that, I think will help some. I wanted to get the physical setup working first and then work with the MIDI latency. The audio latency is, I think it's pretty good right now. I've got it pretty much dialed in, but MIDI is a whole other thing because you've got different things controlling, you have the signal going through different things and controlling different things. So yeah, it's a constant battle. It's a never ending constant battle for latency. Let's see here. Yeah, better to use Ableton native plugins. Yeah, I haven't performed live using Ableton. I've had some friends that have. It's just, it's not what I set out to do when I started to perform live. I had been a DJ for 35 years and wanted to get completely away from DJing. And for me, using a computer in my live setup felt a little bit too much like DJing, especially Ableton Live. I mean, it's called Ableton Live because it was originally designed as a performance DJ software. That's why on the clip view, you can actually put a crossfader on the bottom of each one of them, and you can set that up with a MIDI controller, and you can crossfade between things because it was originally designed as DJ software. So using that to perform live for me personally was not what I was trying to do. I really wanted to get kind of hands-on and playing and performing with the instruments themselves. And so that's why I got away from Ableton, but still use it all the time for production. But performance-wise, I haven't used it that way just because it wasn't what I wasn't working on. So let's see here. Yeah, disable everything else. I agree. Like try to reduce down the strain on your CPU as much as you can, and that's why you use internal or like stock plugins as much as you can, as well as try not to have a bunch of other software running at the same time. Let's see here. Thanks for the latency tips. Love the way we interact with your channel. Awesome. That makes me happy. That was actually a perfect segue. Thank you, Chris. Perfect segue to what I was going to talk about. I thought about mentioning this right at the beginning, but I wanted to kind of start into what we were talking about today rather than doing this. I had an interaction with somebody in the comments of a video that I did a week ago or so, and it just got me thinking about this whole kind of interaction between those of us that put stuff out there to help people with what they're going through, what they're learning, what they're, to help give tips or ideas or feedback or whatever, and the people that are receiving that, and kind of what does that relationship look like? And the comment that I got on the video was, it was a live stream like this, which is what I do. Like you've seen for this whole year, that's pretty much all I've done is live streams because I like the interaction. I like the question and answer. I like the longer form so you can dig deeper into stuff. And the person's comment was basically like, people don't want long form, they want 3-minute tips, and it's disrespectful of you to just stream without a plan and without a script and without knowing exactly what you're going to say and keeping it short and whatever. And I was like, you know what? I disagree. I think there's a place for that. And I think there's a place for this. And I think that if you're interested in 3-minute tips and tricks, there is no shortage of those all over the internet, whether it's on, Instagram or TikTok or on YouTube Shorts or anything like that. You can get short 3-minute tips anywhere. That's not what I do. I prefer to share more. I prefer to interact and do question and answer, and not just show up and say, I know better than you, here's the thing you have to know. I want these to be just like what Chris said, the way we interact. And I want these streams and this whole channel to be about, I fumble my way through learning a lot of this stuff on my own or watching other YouTube videos or whatever. And then I try to put together what I learn to help other people so you don't have to struggle through the same thing. And if it helps you, awesome. And if it doesn't, if it's not your thing, that's awesome too. Like it's really for, this is just out there for whatever you want. And it got me thinking about this whole idea of kind of being entitled to something just because it exists. And it had this kind of pit in my stomach, and I was like, well, how do I talk about this? How do I bring this up? And then that exact day, I think it was yesterday, that I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about doing just a video about this. Aura did a fantastic video about exactly the same thing, about dealing with the hate and about the idea that I have a full-time job. I started my own company this year, stressed out. I have plenty of work to do and never enough money coming in. I have a family, I have a wife, I have 3 kids. I take care of my mom. It's like there's a whole story outside of this. And yet I try to find 2 or 3 hours every week to come on here and help if it's possible, share information if it's possible. And when it's here on YouTube, it's for free. I do sell courses. That's something that, I wish more people were buying them. Some are, and I really appreciate it. And, I would love if I could make a living just selling courses, but I can't. So I have a job. And so trying to be able to find the time to do courses, take care of my family, to, have a job, take care of my dog, take care of myself, do all that stuff while at the same time spending 2 or 3 hours a week to put information out there and share and interact and chat with you guys on the live stream and all of that stuff. I do this because I love to do it and because I really enjoy helping. I really enjoy learning from everybody who comes on the stream. Like, you'll say things and say like, how do you do this? I'm like, I have no idea. And then I'll figure it out. If you watch the last live stream about the Digitone 2, I hadn't used it before the live stream. And so it was like, I had used it for like a few minutes just to kind of get it up and running and make sure it was working before I went online. But everything that I was doing, everything I was learning live in the moment, asking you questions. What do you want to learn? And discovering all kinds of cool stuff about it and hopefully passing that on to you at the same time. So there was that whole side of it. And then another thing that Aura mentioned in his video was the whole idea of people like, oh, you get stuff for free. You shouldn't complain that you have whatever. Well, I will tell you, 95% of every single thing that you see in this frame, I bought myself. A couple of things that were given to me, but they were given to me sometimes for testing, sometimes for as a thank you for using the gear that I use from some of these companies. And they're like, wow, you already use our stuff, you already bought it yourself, and we really appreciate all of the publicity that we get. And they're like, here, we'd love for you to have this. But that happens really rarely. You'd be surprised. And sometimes I get stuff on loan. So for example, I have the Digitone 2 right now on loan. I have this for a couple months and I'm going to use it, figure out if I want to keep it. If I want to keep it, I'm going to buy it. And if I don't decide to keep it, I'm sending it back. And that's kind of the way it works. So pretty much everything you see here, or like 95% of what you see here, was all bought by me, not given to me. And then I take the time to learn it myself, and then take the time to try to teach as much as I possibly can so that you don't have to struggle through that. And I try to give you as much information as I can about the things that I like. That's why I don't really do reviews on this channel. I only kind of talk about the stuff that I use, which is by its nature stuff that I like. If I don't like it, I don't use it. And if I don't use it, I don't do videos about it. So I do videos to try to show you the things that I like and why I like them, and the things about them that I don't like. So that way, hopefully save you some money, because if it's something that's like, oh yeah, that won't work for me, then you don't waste the money and the time trying to buy something and learn it and all of that stuff. You can take that for what it's worth. Take this for the 2 cents. Like, if you want reviews, there's plenty of channels that do reviews. If you want like the video manual for something, everybody watches Loopop. I watch Loopop. I subscribe to his Patreon so I can check things out in his book and see what's going on with that. So we all have different reasons for doing this, but it thankfully, and I really appreciate all of you, thankfully it's really rare that I get those negative comments. But when I do, I always think about it like, I don't understand why somebody would have in their mind that another person was taking time from their life to give them something for free, asking for nothing in return, and for you to kind of shit on it and say, well, it wasn't enough, or it wasn't in the right way, or it wasn't whatever. Okay, if it's not the way you like it, if you want a 3-minute video, go watch a 3-minute video. I watch those sometimes too. But I also really like watching long form video. I love EasyBot's podcasts and his live streams like this. And I learn a lot just by watching his workflow and the way he does stuff and listening to the questions that other people ask. I love watching Analog Kitchen stuff that's longer form. I love watching Aura stuff that's longer form. I love watching, anybody who's doing stuff, Ricky Tinez, anybody who's doing stuff where they're taking time to dig a little deeper. And it's not just like, here's a bunch of tips and tricks just so that I can score big on TikTok. Like, that's not what I'm doing this for. I've been doing this for 3 years. I'm thankful that I've gotten to over 10,000 subscribers in that time. There's plenty of other people out there that have been doing it at the same time as me that have 3, 4, 5 times as many subscribers as me, because they're really focused on getting subscribers, quick content, all of that stuff. And I'm focused on trying to provide something that's different. That's what nobody else is really doing out there, really taking the time to go in depth through things with input and feedback from the people who are out there. So that's why I always say, if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you want anything, put something in the chat, and I am more than happy to answer if I know the answer. And if I don't, I will tell you I have no idea. Like, I'm not the one who's gonna pretend like I know everything about everything. But if I do know, I'll try to help as best I can. And if there's something else that you'd like me to look into, if there's a piece of gear that you've tried that I might like, let me know. I'd love to try stuff, right? I just think it wouldn't be what it is, this channel, if it wasn't for the interaction. And that interaction takes time. So sorry to the dude who left the comment, but I'm not gonna do 3-minute videos because that's not what I do. There's plenty of those on TikTok, so you can go check those out. Anyway, let's see what you guys have to say about my stupid ramblings here. Yeah, so disrespectful of me to give you so much of my time. Yeah, I agree. That was kind of my response. If you look at the comment on the thing, I was like, well, fortunately we live in a time where everybody can get what they feel that they're owed. Let's see. Sometimes people criticize for the sake of criticizing. Yeah, I know. And that's why it doesn't really bother me, but at the same time, I think it sucks. And I think that we need to push back when people do stuff like that, because if it doesn't bother me, but maybe it bothers somebody else. And I don't want them to feel like it's okay, and then they do it again to somebody else. I just think that's horrible. So stop shitting on people. If you're watching this, you're thinking about shitting on somebody, don't do it. Let's see. Big up to you, grateful. Well, I'm glad. Thank you. I'm grateful for all of you guys. Bah humbug. I totally agree. Let's see. Good to see you too, Breathalyzer. As the great George Carlin said, the radio had 2 knobs. One turns it on and off, and the other changes the channel. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. There's plenty of stuff that I watch and I don't like it, so I just don't watch it again. Or I don't watch it all the way through, or I'll start watching something and I'll be like, this isn't really for me, and I'll just change it. I can't even imagine having so little to do with your day that when you saw something that you didn't like, that you took the time out of your day to make someone else's day worse. I just can't imagine. I've never in my life had that much free time where I could afford to just spend my day criticizing people for no reason. I would rather just be like, yeah, I don't like it. Switch to something else. My time is more valuable than is spent telling somebody why what they're doing doesn't match up with what I think they should be doing. But whatever, that's me. Let's see. I can attest to your buying things, having sold you a module. Yes. What did you sell me? Which module did I buy from you, Matthew? As you can see from this video, I've bought a lot of modules. Yeah, I just saw Ed just popped up. I got a bunch of stuff from Ed too, so yeah. The Prism. Yes, it is right there. You can't see it because it's off screen, but it is right there in my case. Let's see here. What else do we have? Creatives will always be criticized. Just keep creating and sharing. Love the videos while I walk my dog. Awesome. That's very cool. And I agree with you. And it's something that I wish people realized. We do this stuff, we make music, and I think all of you are probably the same. We make music because we love making music. We're not doing this, if I wanted to make money from making music, I would get a job working for a company that wrote jingles for TV commercials, right? Or I would write music for video games, or I would write music for stock libraries. If I wanted to make money from music, that's what I would do. We do this because, at least I do this for two reasons. One, I love music. I love making music. I love learning instruments. I love figuring out all of the stuff. I have a lot of fun solving problems and figuring out different ways to do things. And on top of that, I also love to teach. And in my regular day job, I'm a consultant. I teach people how to do things. I coach people through stuff. So I love the teaching side of it, and I love the music side. So that's why I do this. I'm not doing this because I want to make the YouTube algorithm love me, or because I want to make $1 million off of YouTube AdSense, which is not a possible thing to even do. Not even possible to make beer money from that. So anyway, there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different reasons for doing stuff, but that's why I do it. And that's why I like to share this. And something that I tell my kids is don't change to be what you think somebody else wants you to be. Just do your thing and people will find you. And it's the same with this. I may have a quarter the subscribers of some of the people that are doing the same thing for the same amount of time as me, but they're my people that have found me because they like what I do, or they like the way I teach, or they like the information that I cover, they like the music that I make. So I'm not going to change it up and make something different just for clicks. That just doesn't make any sense for me, because that's not why I'm in this. So anyway, deep conversation today about the weirdness of music. Let's see here. What's the next one? Fuck the haters. Yeah, I totally agree with that. You and your channel are awesome. Thank you. I've learned and been inspired very much by your content. It's nice to chill online with you. Thanks. I feel the same. This for me is, I work all week. And then when it comes time on Saturday or Sunday and I can do a live stream, I'm like, I just want to hang out and chill with you guys. That's why I do this, is because I like to hang out and nerd out about music and make music and teach and do the things that I really like to do. So I do this for me, and I'm glad some of you like it too, because that's why I'm doing it. Let's see what else. I think that's the best approach. Thanks. EasyBot is amazing. Yes, he is. And I will add a super, super nice guy too. And so is Ura. I know both of them personally. They're both friends of mine, and they're both fantastic people. As are a lot of people you see on YouTube, and a lot of people get shit on who don't deserve it, because they're really nice people. Jorb is one of the nicest people I've ever met in my whole life, and he has all these ridiculous haters on his videos. And I'm like, man, you don't even know this guy. He is the sweetest human being ever, and you're gonna treat him like that in his videos? It's ridiculous. As you said, fuck those guys. Let's see. Split Treadix did the best Circlon videos. There's several of them, and they're all multiple hours long. Yeah, look at, if you're an Elektron person and you learned the Octatrack at any point in your life, I'm sure you watched Cuckoo's videos on the Octatrack. His videos were like 2-3 hours long because there's a lot of stuff to cover. And he could do that in 3-minute tips and tricks for the next 18 years, but he chose to do the thing and help people. Like, anyway, I don't understand. Ramble on, it's cool. That's me, I talk a lot. Hey Ed, what's going on? Ed's another person I bought some modules from and sold some things to. That's my other thing. I do buy a lot of gear, but I also sell a lot of gear. So that's how I can afford it. I've collected a lot of gear over the years, but I've also sold a lot of gear over the years. I don't know if you can see, maybe see behind me. I'm whittling down the amount of gear in my studio right now because I'm focusing on modular and live performance and live production and producing with the machines that I really love. And I had a bunch of stuff that was just kind of collecting dust, so I'm selling a bunch of stuff as well. And that's how I can afford to get the stuff that I really like too. So anyway, Qubit. Missed that comb filter. Yeah, it's a good one. My music venture is charging me by the hour. You're not getting paid by the hour, you're getting charged by the hour. Just dropped in, so sorry if you explained it before, but where does that go to? How do you record all of your gear simultaneously via USB connection or through line to audio interface? I'll go over that again in a second. That was what I talked about at the beginning, but I will walk back through it really quickly. I'm happy to show more of that. Good guys. Yes, they are. Or is awesome. Yes, he is. Yep. He is a very good guy, a very nice guy. Cuckoo's fucking amazing as well. Yeah, I agree. His stuff is great. His tutorial about the D-Tone one was amazing. I saw Cuckoo in Berlin this year do an entire live set for a club night, for a club gig. He did the entire set on a D-Tone 1 with 4 tracks and was awesome. It did the whole set just using one device. It was pretty amazing. What are some modules you feel like you will never sell? What a great question. Modules and hardware. I think I've got some of both of those. And I will caveat this with never sell unless there's a newer upgraded version of them. You know, like for example, I would have said the Digitact that I wouldn't sell, but a new version came out, so I sold it. You got the new version. So I won't hold on to those ones just to hold on to them, but there's a bunch of them. I mean, the Digitact 2, I don't see myself ever selling that. Within my modular case, I would say the battering ram, I will never sell. What else here? I'm loving the Elektron mixer. I don't see myself ever selling that. I see myself expanding it with additional modules and additional things. Yeah, that would be pretty awesome. The Oxy Meta is great. Again, I wouldn't sell it unless a newer version came out. I love the Endorphins Ghost. It's kind of an integral part of my setup. So let's see if I'll bring up some volume here. Let me know if you guys can hear that. I think you should be able to. It seems like on my end, it's, turn it down a little so I don't clip here. So having something like the Archer's rig, which I also love and would probably never sell. You can hear it's that high kind of noisy percussive sound. So I can run that through the Endorphins Ghost on a send and just listen to what that does by itself. I don't have the clock turned on. So reverb, delay, overdrive, distortion. There's resonance on the filter. There's a filter that I have modulating, so it's kind of sweeping through with a resonant peak. So it'll pick out different pieces of that. And then I can do things manually with it. So So if I turn off the modulation, then I can move the filter myself. And as you find different areas within the sweep of that, it will give you, it'll pick out different harmonics within within whatever sound you're sending to it, and it sounds like a different instrument comes in. So again, that's all just coming from that one send, but I can send multiple things to it. It sounds even cooler. And then you can start to play with the delay timing. So right now I have it on standard timing. So yeah, I think that's one of those modules I don't see myself ever selling because it's such an important part of my setup. I do, I think, and this isn't 100% sure yet, but I think I'm going to be getting a Torso S4 to try out, to test, and I want to do with that similar what I'm doing with the Ghost, which is put it on a send, put things through the granulator and the effects within that, and then return it so that I can create those kind of atmospheric washes. So like if I was to turn everything down but that. So that's the Archer's rig, right? But again, when I start to do the send here, so everything that's not the original sound is all coming from the Ghost, just from that send. So being able to put that through there to create these kind of atmospheres in the background of whatever I'm playing is really super important. I do have some atmospheres in here in the black box, so I can turn that up. But they tend to be more this kind, where it's just kind of a sound in the background, kind of a sound foundation. Right? So, because it would take a lot with the modular setup or with the boxes in order to get similar sounds, so I tend to sample those and put those in instead of using hardware. But what's really cool with the Ghost and what I want to try with the Torso S1 is to be able to put through live signals that I'm playing. So if I change up, so for example, let me take this out. So if I change this sound, I'll move to a different engine. So if I change this to a different sound, and then I can go in and I can change up the, so you can change up tone, you can change up like melodically what you're doing and the sound pattern. And now if I send that through the Ghost, so you can see that atmospheric wash is being made from what's being played in the moment. So if I change that, then it's affecting the live thing. And so the reason why that is really important to me is because when you're improvising live, you don't want to have different atmospheres, different backgrounds, different melodic things for whatever you're playing, and then have to worry about what key you're in and what you're doing. This way I can change, I can change this up. I can change the tuning. So I can change to some weird atonal, something that's not in a key, that's not anything, and then I can send it. And so that's all being made from something that's already being played. And so you don't have to worry about having all that extra stuff. And so that's why I really love it. So yeah, what else? The Oxy One, I again would never sell unless a newer version, a better version came along someday. And that's because this is really the kind of heart and soul of the whole setup of everything that I'm doing, because this is sequencing everything that's in the modular. It's sequencing some tracks in the Digitact. It's sequencing some tracks in the Digitone. It's clocking everything. It's sending out clock to these boxes, to all of them, including the black box. It's sending out transport signal to all of those. It's clocking the PAMS Pro Workout, which is then clocking the delay here, sending a clocked signal to an FM modulator here. So this is really the heart of everything. And then as we started talking about with this hybrid production setup, now when I come home from performing a show with this gear and I set this down, all I have to do is connect the USB into this, and now clock and everything is connected to Ableton. And then I've already got the audio signals. So just really quick to go back over, because somebody had asked about this. Digitact 2 is the audio is going out via overbridge. So one USB cable going to the computer is multi-tracking 15 of the 16 tracks, because apparently Ableton has a limitation that you can't do 16 different things via overbridge. So it's only 15. Soon overbridge will work for Digitone 2, and that will be done the same way. And then everything in my modular is being done from the Elektron mixer to the I/O module from BoardBrain, and that's connected behind the panel using ribbon cables. And I have all of these. If you see all these cables that are going out here, all of these are the post fader outputs. Pre-fader is up above, so I could use those as well. But post fader is here, and every one of the post faders is going out to this, which you can see in this view, going out to all the inputs on this audio interface that's sitting right here. So that gives me 8 outputs from the modular, plus 15 from the Digitact 2. I'm assuming it will be another 15 from the Digitone. And the black box is going through this mixer as well, so that's going out on one of the returns. So really that allows me to multi-track about 40 tracks out of this into Ableton without having to kind of stop and start and do different bits at a time. You can still do that, obviously, but it's not set up that way. It's set up to multi-track out. I don't have anything, just for information, I don't have anything to multi-track the different things I use in the black box, because those are basically looped clips or samples that I have in there that are like longer samples that are looped. So like like that is a looped sample in here. I've got like some subs. So like that's a looped sample in here. So I don't need to multi-track those into Ableton because I already have those samples in there. So if I want that sub, I'm just gonna drag it over from the sample library and then I'll use it. I don't need to put the sample in the black box, then multi-track the sample back into Ableton. I'll just use the sample over there. So what I do need to be able to track in is all of the things that I'm using in a performance that I don't have already as a sample, as a sound in Ableton. So yeah, this allows me to do that. And it's really cool because beyond just sampling your gear and then using that in your production setup, this way you can actually record entire performances, and you'll have moments. It may not be a whole track that you get out of it, but you'll have moments in that performance where you were inspired to do something really cool and unique, and you've captured it on its own track. So that can be used. Like, I'll play for an hour, record everything, then you chop everything up, and it's like if you just went online and bought like 50 sample packs, because you've got all these bits and pieces that you've used throughout your thing, and you made them, you created them in the moment. So it just makes it a lot of fun. And it's that's one of the big things with the hybrid production course is how to produce using hardware and software in a way that's a little bit different from the way everybody else does it. Like if you want a production course on how to use Ableton, this is not that course, because there's so many out there. Like I'll go over a bunch of like my little tricks and stuff that I've learned over the years, but this isn't a how to produce music course. This is a course on how to use hardware and live performance as a tool to produce music, and also how to use a DAW and what you can produce in a DAW in order to bring that into a live performance. For example, into the black box or one-shot samples for the Digitact or things like that. So it's a way to go back and forth between performance and production using hardware and using software. So that's what the course is about. The first session of the course starts the second or the first week of December. I think it's the 5th of December is when it goes live. Sign-ups are happening right now, so if you want to do that, there's a huge sale on right now for Black Friday. Definitely sign up. I could use the money, so put that out there. Sign up for that, and I'd love to see you in the course. I think it would be awesome and teach you something a little different from what you get every day out there. So let's see what the chat says. Second, the battering ram. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I gotta say, it's my two favorite modules of the year were the battering ram and the Meta. They were just like game changing. I think the Elektron is right in there as well, just because it was such a unique new way to do things for me. But the battering ram, like, it's the best kick ever. It's really the best kick. I haven't found anything that even comes close to it. I had tried a whole bunch of kick modules, and I never really wanted to put a kick in my modular case because I never found one that really kind of fit my workflow, which is being able to adjust it really dramatically while you're performing to get different sounds out of it and having all of those things sound good. Everything was like, dial it in for a while until you find that exact right sweet spot, and then you don't ever really want to come off of it because you might not be able to find it quickly again, and what you go off of it to might not be great. With this one, it's just like sweet spot after sweet spot after sweet spot. Like you can just like randomly turn the knobs, like whatever, and that's going to sound good, right? Then you can randomly turn the knobs again. Here, randomly turn the knobs again, and that's going to sound good. And you can randomly turn the knobs again. Anywhere you go. Yeah, there's just not a bad spot in it. It's like, it's the best part about that module. Let's see here. Helpful, thanks. I have a Cocaine and love the Meta. I have the Ghost too, still getting familiar with it. Yeah, the Ghost it's difficult. It works well for doing what I'm doing, but a lot of people are trying to use it as like those individual effects, and it's not the easiest module, I'll let you know. It's very loud, has a lot of kind of noise floor built into it. Just because of all the things that are in there in close proximity. I mean, you've got distortion and overdrive and all that stuff all in one thing. It's just going to be loud. There's no way around it, which is fine with my music, but depending on the kind of music you do, it may or may not be great. You know, if I was going to use individual pieces, like individual reverbs, there's probably other reverbs I like more, or individual delays or whatever. But having it all together as kind of like an all-in-one module effects chain that you can set up any way you want to be able to get those kind of washes that I'm doing, that's why I have it, and that's why I love it. So, yes. Do you just have the filter in high pass, low pass? I'm not sure which one you're talking about. Matthew, put that down in the comments, what you mean by which filter in high pass, low pass. Let me know. I think you're probably talking about the Ghost, which, yes, it's in high pass, low pass mode. But if it's not that, go ahead and put in there what it is. Let's see what else. James, Meta is awesome for 6 HP. Yeah, I agree. Tried the new Cosmotronic Aphelion and it sounded great, but wasn't as good performance-wise. Yeah, it's funny. I got asked the other day what I would recommend for like a hardware version of something like the Meta. And the thing is that most effects, including most modular effects, but also most pedal effects, the analog heat plus effects, which I have, like there's a lot of effects units that are out there, the H9 and the Eventides and like all of that stuff. The Strymon stuff is great, but all of that stuff is really geared towards sound design, right? They're sound design effects. They're designed to make your sound sound really cool, like an individual sound. Performance effects are really different because you're looking for things that will, add things quickly in a moment that'll add, energy or dynamics or whatever. And that's what I love about the Meta. It is not a sound design effects unit. I have those. I use those. I have the effects aids in here. I have the Erica Synths dual effects. Like I have effects that I use for sound shaping effects. The Meta is really unique because it is a performance effects unit. It's designed to have performance. So like if you're playing something, so if you're cruising along like this, you want to be able to just do, quick high pass filter. And it has a kill switch so you can drop right back in. So it's designed to be used for something dramatic and then killed. You have things like the Gator you can use. Same thing with delays. The looper is kind of like a beat effects thing. So you've got those things that are really made for performance. They're made for adding drama, adding energy, adding stuff like that, changing things up really quickly. Where a lot of other effects they're designed more for, making a reverb sound great to make your sound that's going into it sound great, right? So like if I've got like the pizza. So I can take a sound like that, going through the Erica Synths dual effects, right? So it's a very different type of reverb than a reverb that you're going to use to create, again, let's go back to this. I might want to take this reverb and like drop my kick. And create a big dramatic buildup. Right, and then bring it back. So it's really designed for drama, for adding. So it kind of takes the place of the effects that you would have in a DJ mixer. And so the answer that I gave the person that asked me what would be a hardware version of this, the closest thing to this in hardware version would be the Pioneer RMX 500 or RMX 1000. Those are designed as DJ effects. A lot of DJs use those for creating effects when they're using an Allen and Heath mixer that only has filters. It doesn't have any other effects built into it. So they'll put on a master send, they'll put the DJ effects unit. So they have basically the effects just like what's in the Meta, plus a few others in something like that, so that they can add those kind of dramatic buildups, breakdowns, and things like that. But if anyway, but yeah, that would be the closest thing for hardware, I think, is the RMX 1000 or RMX 500. Those are good. They do the same thing. You would just put them on your end of chain and then you've got an effects unit there. So yeah, let's see here. What do you use to monitor cue sounds before you send them to your main outs? Nothing. I know that's not the answer anybody wants to hear, but I don't use anything. So I have the ability to cue with this mixer. I did as well with the mixer that I had before this, the WMD performance mixer. Also had the ability to cue, and I got it originally because I thought that was what I was going to be doing. I thought I was going to be writing stuff in my headphones, and because I started out wanting to do everything improvised and live and written on the fly. And so the idea was that I wanted to be able to do that stuff in my headphones and then bring it in, kind of like if you were cueing when you were DJing and then bringing something in. And I quickly realized that when you're playing live, it's really different from DJing. When you're DJing, if you tune out from the music for a minute and from the crowd to listen for something else and to go through other stuff, the song that's playing is going to take care of everything for you. So it has buildups and breakdowns and interest and changing dynamics and all of that stuff. So you can tune out for a minute or two while you find something else to bring that back in. When you're performing live and you're improvising, you can't do that. You can't take the time to leave what's going on and focus on writing something else, because you disconnect from the moment, you disconnect from the crowd and from the sound of what you're creating, and you're gonna have, random sounds that go on for too long, or something that's gonna slide out of key, or something that sounds really monotonous that you should be modulating with your hand, or you should be changing up the decay, or you should be doing something interesting, and you're not, because you're writing the next thing. So you lose track of what you're doing. And if you're doing that constantly throughout a performance, you really, the performance will really lose a lot. So what I find myself doing, and again, I built this setup to be able to do this. The gear that I have is specifically made to be able, or specifically chosen, I guess, to be able to do what I do. So as an example, with the Oxy 1, I can set this to a key. I can set every sequencer to a key. So I know that whatever I put in here, it's going to be in key. I can see the layout of here, so I know what the pattern's going to be. I even have some little cheat things down here on the bottom. So like if I want to do a 4 on the floor kick, I do that there. If I want to do a breakbeat style kick, if I want to do a different kind of breakbeat, so I have some things that are like noted down here, so I know what they are, so I can change those up live on the fly. But I also, over time practicing what I do, I can look at things and see kind of where they are. So if you look, as an example, if you look at the Oxy 1 right now, so tracks 3, 4, and 5 are these 3 modules up here. So if I wanted those modules to do something that played off of one another, so let's say I have the bass line, that's this one right here. So let's say I have that. Turn that reverb down a little bit. So let's say I wanted the BIA to do something different from that or off that. I can look and say, well, I don't want them to double up on the notes, so I'm going to put things on off notes so it'll be a little bit bouncier when it comes in. Right? Or if I can go in and say I want it on all of the off notes, right? So you can do things like that to get them to play off of one another. You can make it be so that, let's say, do something like a call and response. So you can see it visually on here and see how they will interplay with each other. Then you have the settings that are on the individual modules that you can go in and adjust and change or whatever. And so that allows you to go in, like you heard me just tune this down. So this has the ability to jump. right? So you can change the sound design part of it, but you can see those things here. Now that's individual notes, but what if you wanted to do something melodic? So with this, again, the way this is set up is I can go into this individual sequence here if I want to. I can select that one, and then I can go into kind of a mono mode of that one. So you can see they're all on the same note. But if I want to just change those, and because I have this set to a key, so this is set to Phrygian E, that means that this root is an E and everything up are the 8 notes of that scale. So anything I play on here is gonna be in key. So I know it's gonna work together. So now I can start to think like, okay, as I'm thinking, what do I want in this? What's missing in my track? So let's go back to what we were playing before. So let's say I'm going along like this and I want to add in something and have it be more like a looping, more melodic thing that maybe goes kind of like an arpeggiator. So maybe I start. Right? Or let's say you want to do a bass line that's like, and you wanted to do something that was a rolling bass like that, but you wanted to just change up the notes. And then you can change things. Right? So you can see, basically, you don't need to be able to listen to the stuff before you bring it in. If you have things that can give you either visual feedback because of where they are on a sequencer like this, or if you have feedback looking at the knobs. So for example, you talk about like the individual feedback. If I was going to bring in that same bass line, but I wanted it to come in really kind of low end and subby, I can take out the resonance and move the filter down. And I don't need to hear that. I can look at this and say, okay, this is gonna be, let me just take these all out so I can make it a single note now. So this is all gonna be a rolling bass line in E, and it's gonna be kind of subbed, filtered down when I bring that in. Right, so you can say that ahead of time. Now, if I want this to be more like 303 sounding, I can bring up the resonance, bring up the filter just a little bit, take out the sub oscillator. Then when I bring this up, it's gonna sound more like a 303. Right? So you don't have to know what it sounds like. You don't have to listen to it if you've gotten to know your gear well enough that you know really what the settings are. I'll give you an example with the kick drum as well. So if I wanted to do kind of a 303 style kick, and I wanted this to be like a subby, low, booming kick, I know that's what this is gonna sound like, right? Right? If I want it to be more 909 style, I want to change things up just a little bit. Right? So again, once you get to know your gear, you don't necessarily have to spend as much time listening and writing stuff ahead of time. So that's why I don't cue ahead of time. I write things in this sequencer melodically so I know what they're going to sound like. And then I sound design here. And then I have palettes of sounds that are in my other machines that I can draw from, so I don't have to think too much about what those sounds are. And then I have machines selected. The reason I use the Elektrons is because it's easy for me to go in and adjust a sound once I have decided on using it. So for example, if I was to bring in, actually I'm going to take out some of these because it's going to be a lot. Yeah, so let's say this. So you can hear that sequence. That's the sequence here. So, and I have a little note here that I know that this is being played on track 13, right? So then I can go over here to track 13 and I have the ability. So again, things that are very hands-on and easy to do sound design stuff with, while I also am using things that are easy to control from a sequence standpoint. So again, and that's on a single note. A lot of stuff that I do, I tend to keep things really simple by individual patterns. But like, let's say I wanted to just generate something that was in key, but different notes there. And again, I know it's going to be in key just because of the way that this works. So now the other thing you can do that's really cool with the Oxy One is that I can go into this channel and I can go to a randomization setting and I can change just the pitch, not the rhythm. So if I like that rhythm, but I want to try something different, it's going to be in key. I can set the range and then just generate something new. Right? So it gives you a lot of opportunities to do things without having to listen to them, just because of the way everything's set up and because of the gear that I selected for the rig. So let's see here. Ableton has distortion. Yes, agreed. Hey, what's up, Honey Smack? A legendary techno hardware live performer. Check out his stuff if you haven't. He's amazing, from Australia. His stuff is awesome. Finally made it. Yeah, what time is it for you? It's like, it's the morning there, right? It's tomorrow morning. I think you're like 14 hours or something different from me, 15 hours? I can't remember. Anyway, big question, Syntakt or Digitone 2? I can answer that, at least for me personally. For me personally, my Digitone 2 arrived just over a week ago, and my Syntakt left about 5 days ago. It was sold. For a couple of reasons. The new digital engines that are in the Digitone act very much like the digital engines that are in the Syntakt. The analog engines in the Syntakt are not that important to me, or were not that important to me, because I have other analog sounds within my setup, so I didn't really need them. And the Syntakt gave me the opportunity to have 12, basically 12 synths in one box. This gives me 16 synths in one box. This has some pretty insane new functionality. I wasn't using the effects block all that much, just so you know, and that's another reason why the Syntakt it wasn't important for the way I'm playing. It's very cool, and what it does is really awesome, but I wasn't using a lot of my playing. What I will use with the Digitone 2 is the sound layering. So there's a whole menu for being able to layer sounds so that you can have one sequence on one track control potentially all of the other tracks as well. You can layer as many tracks as you want. If you go into the setup menu and you go down to track layering, so like right now we're on track 13. So if I go to track layering now and I select that, 13 will be selected because that's where I'm on. That's the one that has like the little X on it. That means that's the sequence that I'm layering with. So now any other tracks that I decide to add, now the sequence that is on 13 will control all of those other tracks, right? So again, if I was to, so we kind of come out of this mode, so you notice they're all flashing together because they're all playing that. So that's that thing we were playing before. So if I was to bring the volume up, now this sequence from here, this 3 notes, is not only playing track 13, it's playing all of those other ones that we added to it. And I have individual volume control over all of those, right? So let's see, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 13, and 15. So I can bring up 2 and 4, bring down 6, bring down 8, bring out 10, bring up 11, so I have a multi-layered individual sound that I have control over, not only volume, but on every one of those tracks. I have control over pitch, tuning, the synth engine, different effects. I can put effects on each individual layer of a sound and have them all controlled by one sequence. That sequence just happens to be here because I'm using the Oxy One. But if you were using the sequence, if you had track 13, and you were using just track 13, let's mute this. And then you, then you unmute it. So then when you unmute that sequence on that pattern, you've got it all the others. And you've got the ability to unmute or mute all of those. So that's all the layers being controlled in here, and you can take out individual ones. And then if you mute the original track, the others stop playing as well because they're all following just that one original track. So again, that's why that's why the Digitone 2 is staying and the Syntakt left. So anyway, Syntakt's a great machine, and especially if you like the analog engines, particularly the drum engines. I have an analog rhythm, so I already had those engines and the ability to layer with samples, which you don't have with the Syntakt. So for me, I was just using it as a 12 voice mono synth, and now I have a 16 voice mono synth with a lot more flexibility. So that's why it left. Not because this is better than that, but because for my use, this suits my use better than the Syntakt did, right? So, but yeah, it's for each individual to decide, but that's, yep, that's me. That's why I'm doing it. Let's see here. Hey Shoko, do you do one-on-one lessons in Vancouver? I would love to do lessons in Vancouver. I'm actually trying to get back to Vancouver to play because I love that city. I love playing there. I've been playing there for like 15 years was the first time. 15 years ago, I went to Vancouver to DJ for the first time. So yeah, I would love to get back to Vancouver. I have a lot of good friends in Vancouver. So if you are in touch with the Vantech guys, tell them they should book me because my sound obviously fits with what they're playing and they don't know me from anyone. So if enough people in Vancouver tell them that I should go there to play, then they will book me. So tell them, get them to book me. Let's see. But yes, I would love to go back to Vancouver. I love that city. Love that city. And I would do one-on-one lessons while I'm there, of course. Get me there and I'll do lessons and play a gig and it'll be amazing. So let's see what we got here. With the Oxy, you don't really need a touring machine. Yeah, I mean, like, I have a touring machine in my big case and I never use it because of the Oxy. So you can generate a lot of randomness here. The way you can generate randomness here is kind of like having a combination of a random oscillator, touring machine, quantizer, and sample and hold, like all as one thing. You can kind of do all those by using the random generation stuff that you have here. So it's pretty cool. It's very, very fun, especially for things that are melodic. Because you have enough guardrails, you have enough control over the randomness. And if you watch Ricky Tinez's video today, but it was about random generation, but with some control. And that's my whole thing. It's like everything here is random generation, but with control. That's how I can play. The way I play, let's see here. Love the Elektron for sure. The drive was top tier, just comparing to the performance aspect. Yeah, it's great sound-wise. It sounds awesome, but performance-wise, the meta's kind of, it is what it is. Let's see here. Do you tune your oscillators before you play? I used to. I don't anymore. So a couple things. If it's important to you. So the stuff that I play tends to be fairly atonal. It doesn't really matter if it's in key. And so I try to get them close and I can tune them by ear while I'm playing. If something's a little weird or a little off, it's no problem. But I generally, it's not that big of a deal. I do tune them and get them set, but if they go out, it's not the end of the world for me. But I will say with the Oxy One, one of the things that's really super cool with the Oxy One is that you have an offset on every single channel here. So what I would do is take your tuning knob on whatever module that you want to tune, bring it all the way down to 0 or all the way up to the top, whatever's the easiest for you. So you have a set spot that you can always go back to, or if you want to draw a little line, you can do that too. Have a set spot that you always go back to, and then tune using the offset. So that way, if you're playing live and you bump a knob, all you need to do is go back to that known location, and once you hit that, you know you'll be back in tune. That's the hardest part with a lot of oscillators, is you don't know where that is. I also I'm fortunate enough with like ones like the Bastel Pizza, they don't really go out of tune. So once you do the fine tune and you get it in place, it'll stay in tune because it's a digital oscillator. And then I have the tuning knob set as an octave jump. So now if I turn this, right? So I can jump octaves and it'll stay in tune the whole time. I used that. If I need to tune to something, I'll put that on an E or whatever, and then I'll tune everything else to that on an E. So that way I know, because I know that this one will stay in tune. So a lot of different ways that you can do it, but it's really handy having that offset in the Oxy. Let's see. Are you loving the Digitakt 2? Yes. I think you got that from my demo before, but yes, I'm totally loving it. You're welcome, Laszlo. 10:41 Sunday morning. Yes, it is 4:41 Saturday afternoon for me. Let's see, what else? Digitone 2, yes. And humbled. Don't be humbled, man. You're awesome. Your stuff is killer. I was looking for 17 cents in one box. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for 17 in one box, I guess the Digitone 2 is not going to be for you because it's only 16 cents in one box. But yeah, it's also, you know, talking about the analog engines and the Syntakt, the other thing that's cool is that this has a master overdrive on it now. So it's kind of like a master distortion or master kind of, a master analogifier. So you can really make it sound a bit gritty and less digital, less FM. So again, they just kind of made it just that much closer. So if you don't really need the effects block or the analog engines, I would say go with the Digitone 2. And if you do need those things, definitely go with the Syntakt. It's awesome. You can't go wrong either way. They're both amazing machines. This one just fits better my use case, my work style. But let's see. You can track layer in Digitone 1. Yeah, I saw that after my last video. I never even knew it was there because it's so buried. And again, when you think about it, this was the big reason why it's such a huge upgrade with the Digitone 2. If you were going to track layer with the Digitone 1, you have 4 voices, right? So you can layer up to 4 sounds, or you can have 2 sounds with 2 layers. With this, you have 16 to mix and match. So like as an example, if you wanted to use that 2 voice layer thing, like what you would do in the Digitone 1, you could do 2 voices layered 2 times, I think, or you may only be able to layer 1 voice with multiple other voices, so up to 4 on 1, but I don't think you can do different ones. With this, you could say, let's say for example, you wanted to take voices 1 through 8, tracks 1 through 8, and layer them with the track that was right below them. So 1 and 9, 2 and 10, 3 and 11. You could have 8 voices that each had 2 layers. Or you could have 4 voices that each have 4 layers, or 2 voices that each have 8 layers. Or you can do it any way you want to mix and match it. So it gave it an incredible amount of power. Something else that I've started messing around with this, and again, this goes back to another reason why I love the Oxy One. So with the Oxy One, I'm sending out from on sequencer 1, track 1, this is my kick that's being sent out via CV to the battering ram, right? So that's my kick being sent out there. But I can also send that signal out via MIDI. So the exact same channel, or the exact same track, the exact same sequence can be going out via CV and MIDI at the same time. So I have it going CV to this module, and I have it going MIDI to track 1 here, which is also controlling track 9. Track 1 is a kick, which, let's see if I can bring this up. Actually, I can't bring those up separately right now. So track 1 is a kick, but that's not the important one. Track 9 is another kick sound that I went to, oops. Okay. Track 9 is another kick sound, and what I did with this one is I pitched it way down, I filtered it way down, and then I added some delay, some reverb, a bit of overdrive, things like that on it, and I turned that into the rumble for this kick. So now, if I bring up this level here, and if I have to go back and change the volumes here. Yeah. So now track 1, that's the kick, doesn't have anything playing on it, but if I wanted to, I could turn down this kick, and I can just bring up this kick. Wow. I didn't realize I tuned that up so high. And it still keeps the same sequence, and it still keeps the same rumble with it. But if I take it down, I only have the rumble, and then I can bring this kick back in. And because it's coming from this sequence, which is generally really difficult to do when you're doing, ooh, I think I'm clipping here. Sorry, everybody. Just noticed that. That's a bit low. Yikes. There we go. That should be a little better. So with the, because it's, so here, stop this for a second. Where the challenge normally lies within a live setup to be able to do a kick and rumble, it's very easy to do in a DAW. But when you're playing live, it can be a challenge because you need to have your original signal, and then you need to have a processed signal of the same sequence. Or you can sequence the rumble in, which is what I did for a long time, because it was really the easiest way to do it and maintain control over the original kick and the rumble. The problem is, when the kick pattern would change, the rumble was still sequenced, so it wasn't sequenced together. So then you had to go in and re-sequence it, or you had to change them together. So what's cool now with this setup is, so now it's a rumble, that's off of a 4/4 kick. Let me just take one out. So you see the rumble follows the sequence of the kick, just like what it would do if you were doing it in a DAW. So normally in a DAW, you would take your kick signal, you would send it through an effect send, and then you would have that effect send come back to a different channel, and then you can use that other channel to adjust. You can do that here as well, or with hardware as well, but it takes a lot of modules and it takes a lot of processing, and that gets expensive just to get a rumble on a kick. So often what I would do is just sequence it or sample some rumbles and then use them in the black box. Now I can have an actual rumble in here where I have control over individual sounds. So for example, if I don't want it to delay as much and have it just be like a boomy reflective rumble, I can do that. If I want it to delay slightly, I can just add a little delay. If I want it to delay like crazy, add some chorus to it, less reverb. Control over filter. Right? So you can see all of that is control, individual control over just the rumble itself. So yeah. It's a great pair, the Oxy One and the Digatone 2. They play nicely together. Let's go back to the chat here for a moment. Let's see here. Wow, thanks. Love your work too, man. When you randomize the pitch notes on the Oxy, are you using the human setting to do so, or how do you keep the notes in place while changing? Okay, so when you go into, let's just use this one, and yeah, so that way we can do this by itself. So when you're on this channel, if you do shift and the little dice, that takes you to the Euclidean sequencer first. The second time is the random generator. You can set the range, so plus 5% all the way, or plus 0% all the way up to plus 24%. And if you go the other way, it can go all the way down to plus or minus 24%. So it'll go up and down from the root note, however you choose to do that. So we'll set it relatively small, so let's say plus 4. Then the randomization is how many times will it play the same note before it jumps. So if you go to a random of 100, no two notes the same will be next to each other and the jumps will be greater. If you do less randomization, I usually try to keep that around like 20 or 25 or so it's not too much. Then the important one is the last knob. So the last knob is normally, if you're going to generate a whole random sequence, you would hit this and that would generate all the notes. If you put it at 100%, every step will have a note. Right? But if you don't want to change the notes, you can, first of all, you can reduce down the density. So like, let's say if it was at like 30%. So it's generating notes and pitch, right? But if you only want to do pitch, keep going to the left, down past 0. And then when you get down there, you have humanize, order, pitch, and invert. So invert will change the steps from one way back going the other direction in the scale. But if you go down to pitch, all that does is randomize just the pitch, but it keeps the gate the same. So you can do the range much bigger. And if you put the range to 0, it'll just put them right back to the root note. So then you can start to. So anyway, that's how you generate the notes randomly without changing the pitch. So it's in the density, but it's turn the knob all the way down until you get to pitch. So, really love my analog rhythm Mark II for my drum sounds. Me too. Fave drum machine ever. Me too. I believe you used to use one. I still have one. It's actually right there behind me. I'll show you. It is right here. Yes, I still love it. I still use it. I stopped using it for live performance because it is too big to haul around with all my other stuff. I wish it was smaller. I wish they would make a Mark III version that's the same size as the Mark I, but with all the functionality of the Mark II, that would make my day. But yeah, it's just too big. So when I wasn't using the battering ram for my kick, I would make all of my kicks in the analog rhythm. I was originally using that for live and I would just use those. And it was kicks that I would use, like layering a 909 sample with the synth engines to make something cool. Then I would resample that. And when I stopped hauling that around with me, I was using the Digitact and I would pull those samples out of there, load them in the Digitact. So that way I had my same drum sounds that I loved from the rhythm, but I had them in a smaller box that I could carry more easily. And it was just as playable, if not more playable. So yeah, I was using the rhythm forever for that. I still do love to use it for production, so that's why I still have it here. But as far as this, as soon as I got the battering ram, I took the kicks out of here. Although it's funny, I do still have a kick in here. Let's see. Take those off and just make that a kick again. Take the filter all the way off on that. So that's all there. So that kick that I have in there is kind of a backup kick or like a secondary kick, is actually a sample from the battering ram. So if I was to mute this, that's pretty much more or less the sound. Pitched out a little more. Right, so that's a sample from that, just because I like this kick so much more. I like this kick more than the kicks I was getting out of the rhythm after all the years of using the rhythm. So that's why I switched to the battering ram and kind of pulled my kick out. I have that as a secondary. And often what I'll do with this one as well is, like you saw before, I'll have this sequenced as a rumble. Before I was doing the cool rumble thing with the D-Tone 2, I was doing something similar here, but sequencing it. So I would just filter it all the way down. So that way it would be like, and because it's sequenced, I can pull it off of the 1, 5, 9, and 13, so I didn't have to sidechain, and then I can just shorten this up. And because it's the same kick, they go really well together. And then so anyway, yes, I did have a rhythm. I loved it. I still love it. Still my favorite drum machine ever. But this is my favorite kick ever. So that's why I use this now. Let's see what else. I figured it would be pitch, but for some reason it changes the gates for me. Not on the multi-track sequencer mode. So it's the same. So if you were to go into, I have these all set up as multis now, don't I? I can make this one a mono. Okay, so this is a mono sequencer now. So if I go in and I make a gate pattern here, and I send this, where do I want to send that? Let's send it to 4 over here. Let's see if that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to mute some stuff here, sorry. So that's coming to that sequence now. Okay, so we've got that coming to there from our sequence down here. So now if you do the same thing, you go to the dice mode, you turn the density all the way down to where it gets to pitch, and then when you hit it, so it kept the gate pattern the same. They're still in the same spot, in the same row, but it just moved them. So if I step back, and if I generate another one, another one, right? So you see, it keeps the gate pattern the same, and then it just changes the pitch, changes the note. So it's, it works whether it's in a mono, whether it's in the multi, whichever one it's in. That randomness, if you bring that all the way down to pitch, it will only change the pitch and it won't change the gate as well. So, let's see here. Yes, the oxy is deep. Maybe you were doing something wrong. Maybe it was just like you hadn't found that particular spot yet. That's fine. But it's, yeah, it's pretty cool that it does that. And the way I perform live, I'm kind of doing everything improvised in the moment. So I love the control of being able to say, you know, okay, I want an 8-step sequence. I want the notes to be, you know, on these steps because because I like that step pattern or whatever. And then I can say, so I can say, I like that step pattern, but I want to go in and change the pitch. Or if I wanted it to be like on a, so yeah, it just gives you a way to be able to control just the pitch without the changing the gate pattern. So you can keep your rhythms the same. Can you play a hypnotic, bleepy 90s inspired sound like Alton Bass or DC11 with your setup? Would love to hear your take. Yeah, I mean, sure. it's not going to be a super modern sounding kick drum. modernize it a little bit. All right. Yeah. So there we go. Yes, I'll take a request and then I'll go off on a tangent. Sorry about that. Anyway, hopefully that was kind of what you were looking for. Let's see. Awesome. Thanks. I nailed it. Sweet. I wasn't sure about that, but yeah. Completely nailed the sound request. Awesome. I don't usually take requests, but anyway, let's see. Keep going back and forth about the Ghost module. Yeah, it's, you know, like I always say on this channel, I will be totally honest with you. It is not for everybody. It has a really specific use, which I love it for and would never get rid of it. But at the same time, it's definitely not for everybody. It's not a clean sounding effect. I mean, you could use it as a clean sounding effect, but there's other things that would take up less space and, you know, would probably be better at that. But the sound of it is unique. It's special. It's got a lot of flexibility. It can do a lot of really cool things in certain circumstances, right? But if you want to, you know, just like a pure filter, get a different filter. If you want a pure delay, get a different delay. But being able to have those things all together in kind of its own sound creating unit is amazing, and I love it. So yeah, I would never sell it, but at the same time, I will be the first to tell you it is not for everybody. It's not a module that is going to gel with everybody. I've had plenty of people that I know that have gotten it and sold it, plenty of people that I know that have gotten it and would never get rid of it. So it just kind of depends. It's yeah, it's not a thing that's perfect fit for everybody, but it is perfect fit for some people. So anyway, that was sick. Thanks, man. Bravo. You're welcome. Sweet. Playing grooves in the heart. Honestly, I wonder if I could. I wonder if I could sequence it. That would be funny. Let's play with something and see. Let's see if I go to this track. Oh, is it muted? Oh, and filtered. That's why. Take out all that stuff that I was playing before. Let's see. Extend out the end of that one to here. That didn't take that at all. So let's see.
Yeah, it would take me a little longer to do that. Anyway, I could. I'm sure I could. If, give me a few minutes, but anyway. Cool. El circo está en el corazón. Yeah, the groove is in the heart. You know what circo means. That's where the name circo comes from, is it means groove in Spanish. So, yes, nice call. You figured that out. Eleni Adiades, yes, thanks. Oh yeah, for the ghost. Yeah, it's not the perfect one, but it's a great one. So I think it's really good for a lot of people. So anyway, what other questions you have, chuck them in the chat before we call it a day here. I know there's a lot of things that we went over as far as the hybrid live setup. Sorry, I couldn't do the Ableton stream at the same time. I'll try to get that set up before the next time. It just, my computer was not happy with using OBS and Ableton and all the other stuff all together. So I'll try to get it sorted out for next time. Hopefully I'll be able to figure out how to make it actually work with slow internet service. But yeah, in the meantime, anything else about how this is connected, how I'm using this as not only a performance rig, but also a hybrid production setup as well. That's kind of what it's for. Another thing too, just so you know, I know this sounds like a sales pitch for the Oxy, but I'm just such a huge fan, and it's really changed so much how I perform, because I'm using this for everything, for all of the machines, including the modular, including some of the Elektron stuff as well. So everything gets kind of centralized through here. What's really cool with this too is that if I don't have this whole setup, like if I wanted to, I can just unplug these. Now I can just take this with me, and I can just go over to my computer. I can connect one USB cable, and all of these patterns that I just made, anything that I just did, anything that's really interesting, I can just route it to soft synths and Ableton. I can send it to different stuff. I can route it to different things. I can send it to my big modular rig. I can, wherever I want to, I can kind of send it all. And having that is really amazingly powerful. It also has Bluetooth MIDI. So like when I'm on a flight traveling for work, I can just pop into my phone, and I'll go to my little music folder here, and I'll open up, let's say, synth 1, right? So then we have a synth built in here that I can use in here, or via Bluetooth MIDI, I can sequence it from here. Now, it's not that important to sequence the synth. It's great to be able to pop in some AirPods with your phone, and you don't have to have any cable or anything, and you can just listen to what's going on in the synth. But it's a great way to kind of work out things, practice with your sequencer, write patterns that you may want to use later on for production or for performance, and then you can keep those within the Oxy. And then you can route those to other things, right? You can route those to your DAW when you get back home. You can route it into a modular system. You can route it to a hardware box or a hardware synthesizer, whatever. So to be able to do that is all pretty cool. So the Oxy One really kind of revolutionized the way I play, and it's made it just that much more fun, and I think better. So, any other questions that you guys have there on anything? Otherwise, I think we're gonna call it a day. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for suffering through having to listen to this long conversation and not getting a 3-minute tip and trick out of me. But that's not what you're gonna get. You're gonna get other stuff. That's why I do these, streams, because I like it. I enjoy hanging out with you guys. So thank you all for hanging out with me. I appreciate it as every single time, and hope to hear from you all soon. Take my course if you would like. Now is the time to sign up if you're thinking about taking it anytime in the next 3 months, because there's a huge sale right now for Black Friday. Just go to circolive.com/courses, and that will get you right into either the performance course, which I'm also teaching improvised live performance, or my new production course. That's a hybrid production course that's starting in December. Signups are open December, January, February for both courses. And and right now they're 40% off for the next 5 people that sign up. And after that, it'll go down to 30% and then 20%. And the discount keeps going away. So the sooner you sign up, the bigger discount you get. Hope to see you in one of the courses. It would be awesome to have you there. It's a lot more one-on-one time, as well as a whole bunch of exclusive videos that you don't find here on YouTube that are a lot more kind of focused in on those things. But anyway, thank you guys very much, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Thanks very much, and we'll see you soon. Take care.